Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Anton, and welcome to today's video for Legends of Runeterra. Today, what are we going to be doing? We've recently had a balance patch for this card game. Lots of new cards, or not new cards, but lots of new buffs and some nerfs to very oppressive decks, in my opinion. So we're going to be talking about like 5 decks that are using some of the buffed cards that, in my opinion, will have a home in the upcoming meta, whether that's in around like potentially tier 1 or at least tier 2. I do think that every single deck here has some meta viability, especially with some more fine tuning. These are just some day 1 decks to try out if you're just overwhelmed from all the changes. But there is definitely, of course, like with all card games and all metas, there will definitely be some cards in these decks that you will add or remove when a meta starts to take shape. So, let's start looking at some decks, and let's look at the first deck. Now, we're going to be starting out with something kind of simple here. Ahri Cannon. Ahri Cannon, not much has changed about this deck. The deck has been nerfed like crazy. Ahri's been nerfed. Seedling's nerfed. Kinku Wayfinder is nerfed. Droplet has been nerfed. You can go even further back if you really want and say like Deny, Twin Discipline, Go Hard have all been nerfed as well. I think this deck is good. I think the deck is a very strong tier 2 deck. Obviously, you're going to have to tech this deck for a meta though, because Ionia, specifically the spell suite of Ionia, does like to be a little reactive, like how many denies, how many notifies, do you want more recalls, more tellstones, etc, etc. But I do think the buff to Cannon, specifically Cannon, will bring this deck, or at least some Cannon deck, back into the meta. If you don't know what the Cannon buff is, it is his spell. Mark of the Storm used to deal 2 damage, now it will deal 3 damage. You might say like, oh, well, the streamer, that's a pretty small buff. I think it's a little deceptive, and I think it's a little reductive to say going from 2 to 3 damage is a small buff. A lot of things are at 3 health. A lot of things out there are played because they survive 2 damage. And of course, Cannon, Ahri Cannon specifically, has lots of ways to recall, get multiple Mark of the Storm, so you're going to be doing that 3 damage quite a bit. Just off the top of my head, things that will die to Mark of the Storm now: Eye of the Dragons, Kindreds, quite a few things. So I do think this deck is good. Ionia is annoying. Sure, Ahri dies to Mystic Shot. That is a little annoying, but you are Ionia. You have ways to protect her if you really want to. Still plays Kinku Wayfinder, of course, too, because while it's been nerfed and you only get 1 card from Wayfinder, it's still a pretty powerful effect. And a 4-mana 3/3 is a solid, okay, decent-sized body for the cost. And like I said earlier, tutoring up a Cannon or a Droplet is solid. And then you got, your standard, the old style Ahri Cannon. You're playing 3 Go Hards as your non-Ionia card. You're going to use Go Hards as just ways to get rid of some cheap chump blockers and the pack your bags for a little bit of burn damage. And Sign In gives you your late game. So overall, pretty old, kind of boring deck, not really taking advantage of any kind of exciting buff. But, it worked in the past. It was really strong in the past, and it got a buff, so I do think it's really good, because I think going from 2 to 3 damage is really, really strong. Now let's go to something a little more exciting in my opinion. A deck that I really, really like, Ashe LeBlanc Shellfolk. Now you might say like, oh, okay, streamer Shellfolk. I hate Shellfolk. I'm sorry if you do, just skip ahead a few minutes. But I love Shellfolk. Shellfolk has gotten Shurima Shellfolk has gotten 1 buff, potentially 2. And the main buff is Zillion. Zillion had his champ spell changed to Careful Preparation. Careful Preparation was a card we already played a lot of the time in this deck. And a lot of the time your opponent would just never kill Zillion because they knew his champ spell, the 7 mana revive spell, whatever you want to call it. I honestly forgot the name of it. But most people didn't kill Zillion until he was about to level up from time bombs because his champ spell sucked. Now you might see your opponents actually wasting removal on Zillion, which makes your Shellfolk safer. If they don't waste the removal on Zillion, they're opening themselves up to you casting more careful preparations, which is really strong. If you have the Shellfolk out, of course, you get to do the whole predict Shellfolk nonsense. So yeah, I think this deck is really good. Currently also trying Benemone. Benemone is now a 4/4 for 4. I'm looking at Benemone kind of like a chump wump. Play it, just use it for the 4/4 body and save the pranks for later for when you do play Shellfolk. So kind of trying it. Might go down to 1, if any, at all, but mostly Benemone is here for testing. You could definitely remove it for something else. Rite of Passage, I believe that is the correct rite. I'm thinking of the 2-mana rite, the landmark rite. You could also consider adding that into the deck too. It does technically have some synergy with Shellfolk as well. And if you add a couple of them, you also get the more consistent. You make the alternate win con of leveling up Zillion a little more consistent, which is sometimes a thing you might have to do because sometimes your opponent just has ways to easily answer Shellfolk without interacting, like Blinded Mystic or Minimorph. Especially if Darkness gets more popular and Minimorph gets more popular, we might need that. But at least at the moment, it seems like Darkness is still playing Vengeance, not Minimorph. Also, I guess that's another quick note. Darkness is another deck that I am not going to be mentioning because, in my opinion, Darkness's buff is not that exciting. But yeah, if you like Shellfolk, I do think Shurima Shellfolk is the best Shellfolk out there. I don't think Targon Shellfolk will be good. You could definitely try Targon Shellfolk with, say, like Zoe, Aphelios, and the buffed up Star Shaping. I just don't think it'll be good. Speaking of Star Shaping, though, our next deck, another favorite of mine, Thresh Aurelion Sol. I love playing Thresh Aurelion Sol. It's one of my favorite decks to play. It's never really been a top tier deck, but it's always been this kind of tier 3 deck that if you tech it for the meta and you're a good pilot, it can put out some pretty solid, impressive even results. Trying a new build here actually because of one of the cards that we're playing, Hate Spike, got buffed. But yeah, like this card got a couple of buffs. Or this deck, sorry, got a couple of buffs. Basically, Star Shaping is healing 5 again, and Hate Spike is 1 mana instead of 2 mana. I'm also trying out Vora as well. I've been trying out Vora and Sulter in a lot of decks now. For example, I've been trying a Kindred Karma deck that plays Sulter. You might say, like, okay, so why are we playing Vora instead of Sulter in this deck? Couple of reasons. One, we have enough 2-drops, I think. We don't need the 1/3 body of Sulter, and Vora does help our lack of 3-drops. We only really have Solari Priestess. This list actually used to play Conductor of the Mist, a 3-mana 4/2 hollowed unit. I pretty much just took that out for Vora because I'm playing Kamavoran Dragon now. And the husks are solid sacrifice fodder for Kamavoran Dragon. Sadly, if you do use Kamavoran Dragon to kill the husk, it will get the Slay trigger, or I guess, yeah, that is a Slay trigger, so you will drain and grow the Kamavoran Dragon, but you don't get the stat and keyword from the husk. If it did work that way, it'd actually be kind of OP, and I'd be playing more Kamavoran Husk decks. But yeah, I think this deck is really good. I think Hate Spike is a real card now at 1 mana. Not sure of like the unit base at the moment. I'm not sure how many minions, if I should be playing Fading Icon as well. Because you do need to kill an ally for Hate Spike. There's definitely some fine-tuning still being done with this deck. Like, how many Star Shapings do I want? How many Trifexas do I want? I'm currently doing a 2-1 split, 2 Star Shapings, 1 Trifecta. I think 2 trifecta, 1 star shaping, or even triple trifecta will just give you too many cards in your hand, and you won't be able to empty your hand fast enough to prevent getting run over. So I like star shaping because the 5 health is actually meaningful. I actually had a game earlier today where I won the game literally on 1 health, and that 1 health came from that extra health from star shaping. It was against a aggro deck, a Misfortune TF Pirate Burn deck. You also might say, like, what's the 1 of Telescope doing in here as well? I'm going to be honest with you, the 1 of Telescope is the 40th card. I really just couldn't think of a 40th card I liked better than the 1 of Telescope, but you could definitely take out Telescope for, say, like, another Vora, a Mystic, a Hush, Withering Whales, etc., etc. Clutch? Dragon's Clutch? I think that might be the name of the card. I honestly can't remember. The 3 mana, draw 2 dragons or give your dragons +1/+1, and Overwhelm is another card you can consider putting in this deck over Telescope. Lets you draw your Aurelion Souls more consistently, and you do have a second dragon in the form of Camivore and Dragon. I kind of like Telescope a little bit more than that, but you could consider it, definitely. But yeah, I think this will be a fairly strong deck. Targon, like, the game in general has slowed down. I would say it should slow down from the nerfs. Targon, specifically Invoke Targon, loves when the meta slows down. A lot of decks that would just prey on these kind of slower Invoke style decks are just going to be gone now, or at least a lot less represented and just weaker in general. So, you know, like Kai'Sa, Azir Aurelia, etc., etc. Like, this deck could never beat Kai'Sa decks if they just drew decently and played decently. Like, I've beaten Kai'Sa players with this deck, with Thresh Aurelion Sol, but I'm going to be honest with you, I feel like every time I beat a Kai'Sa player with Thresh Aurelion Sol, they were either really bad or they drew really bad. But yeah, I think this is a solid deck right now. I do think it needs a little more fine-tuning. And I will say I definitely think it needs a couple of days for a meta to shape out and for this deck to start teching certain cards for that meta. Good example is Withering Whale. Do we want Whale? Do we want Piercing Darkness? Stuff like that. But I do really like Vora, and I like Camivore and Dragon in this deck, and I really like Hate Spike, and I think Hate Spike is a real card that will be in a really powerful deck. And we just need to find that deck, whether it's a control deck, a more mid-rangey deck, aggressive deck, something like, I don't know, like things like Nasus Thresh, Kindred Karma, Thresh Aurelion Sol. There's a lot of possibilities for this card, and I do think Hate Spike is a real powerful card now at 1 mana. 1 mana deal 2 is really strong, basically. And our next deck that we're going to be talking about, we've got a mid-range deck here for you guys. For all of you who love mid-range, they always give a buff to this deck. I feel like every single balance patch and even card release, there's always a buff to Ashe LeBlanc, freeze/reputation, whatever you want to call it. And what is the buff this time? If you haven't looked at the patch and haven't kept up with the patch, or you just forgot, a couple of them. Bloody Business now has reputation on it, so its reputation is, when reputation is active, Bloody Business now costs 2 mana, and Harsh Winds is 5 mana. I'm showing off a very standard list here, nothing too crazy about Ashe LeBlanc. It's kind of funny though, like Ashe LeBlanc actually loved Kai'Sa because, you know, freezing Kai'Sa kind of made her a little bad, because you would always be scared to attack in with Kai'Sa. Even though you have the pings, your opponent will have big-ish units because that's kind of what Ashe LeBlanc does. But I would say if you want to, there is another build you could do, and that's playing some Yetis in the deck. I do think putting in Yetis in the deck is an option, like Ancient Yetis, the 7 mana Overwhelm spell as well. I don't think it's as good as the more standard version that I'm showing off here, but I've seen some people trying it out. I'm not a big fan, but I do think Ashe LeBlanc is a solid tier 2 deck now. I really think Bloody Business is really strong. Ashe LeBlanc just gets reputation relatively easily thanks to Yetis, Ashe and LeBlanc themselves, the Glory Seeker, Sentry itself. So I really like the deck, and Harsh Winds just lets you close out the game that much easier now, and I think it does actually, I think this deck is actually pretty solid now. So big fan of the deck. While I don't play mid-range too much, it is one of my more, when I do get in a mid-range mood, it is one of the decks I really like to play. So go take it out for a spin on ladder. Seems pretty good. I still do think the biggest weakness of Ashe LeBlanc is the weaker than average early game, I'd say. Like Omen Hawk's not that great. Iceveil Archer's fine, but not amazing. And Glory Seeker's a little fragile, but you can try it out. Maybe like fine tune the deck a bit. I just threw out a pretty standard list here, but you can add things like Elixir of Irons as well instead of Brittle Steels, more Culling Strikes, Reckonings. There's variations and cards you can add if you want to. And now our final deck. We saved the best for last. Not necessarily the best in the meta, but the most fun for the last deck. I know a lot of people know I love Karma, and are probably saying, where's the Karma deck? Saved it for last. And we're combining it with another buffed card. We're talking about Zoe Karma. Now you might say like, okay, streamer, walk me through this deck. First off, Zoe Karma was actually a really, really old deck. Like Karma Targon in general was a thing. The idea was you play Karma, level up Karma, star shaping. Doubled up star shaping. A Karma doubling star shaping was usually game over for a lot of decks. It's still a lot of value. The only problem I'm seeing with that idea is not that many decks care about, like, if you get to that point, you've probably already won the game where you're able to cast a Karma, cast Star Shaping, and not die the next turn. You probably already won the game. What's our other card we're talking about, though? When we're talking about buffs? Starbone. Starbone now, instead of having to behold the messenger, the 2/2 for 2 doggo who draws a card celestial, now you just have to behold a celestial. Anything. It could be Equinox, it could be a Charger, etc., etc. I've been trying to figure out what I like best for Starbone. I've got 2 builds I've been trying out and fine-tuning for Starbone so far. The first one is the one you see on screen, of course. The second one is more of a mono Targon list, so you can play Mountain Scryer, the 4-mana Allegiant Sky. That way it also discounts your Celestials as well, which is pretty sweet. The non-Targon side of that deck is 3 Bards, because while Bard was nerfed, I still think Bard, specifically the Chimes, are better and are just fine in a slower, grindier deck, which is what Targon wants to be. Not playing Karma in that deck. I think my current build is Zoe Aphelios. Can also try Zoe Diana eventually. But I really like this deck. Also, doubling up Starbone with Karma is pretty cute. The biggest problem I've been running into with Starbone is just having enough invokes to actually make me want to play Starbone. So because of that, we're actually playing Fangs. We're playing 3 Fangs. I really don't like Fangs. I think Fangs is not good anymore as a 2/2. But it gives you your cheap Celestials, so you'll find your Chargers, you'll find your Serpents, you'll find more Messengers, I guess. And Zoe as well. Like, while I like Aphelios a little more than Zoe at the moment, because in my opinion, Zoe just dies a lot of the time because of there's a lot of pings in the meta, Pokestick, Pokestick, Vile Feast, Make It Rain, etc., etc. I do think we should probably play Zoe over Karma for a couple of reasons. One, we are Ionia Targon. We have solid protection cards to protect Zoe if we want to go for the Zoe level up. And we only really want to have her hit once and give us 1 star chart anymore, and that's just great for us. And even if Zoe dies and all that, we still have the other extra win cons of big Celestial from Star Shaping, Karma herself, maybe a big Celestial, or just a strong Celestial from Solari Priestess, like Traveler into something. We got a lot of value, basically, is what I'm saying. I've been playing a lot of Targon Karma. You can go check me out on my stream for that if you want. I've been really liking it. Not sure how good Targon Karma is going to be. I do think Targon Karma kind of struggles against Darkness. And it seems like Darkness might be a meta threat. And Darkness can always play Minimorph. And Minimorph does really hurt Karma decks. So yeah, watch out for Darkness if you want to play Karma. But still, I really like the deck. I'm not sure if I really like Starbone, but if I were to remove Starbone, I'd go back to playing Aphelios instead of Zoe, and I'd be back on Aphelios Karma. So yeah, basically, I think if you want to play Starbone, you should play Zoe. If you're not playing Starbone, you should probably play Aphelios if you want to play Targon Karma. But there's of course a lot of, like all these other decks, there's a lot of cards that I'm still working on and considering. Sonic Wave is a card I'm considering in the deck too, just for some solid removal to challenge some stuff with your Dragonlings or Fangs. Sunburst as well, if we want that, like the 6 mana Daybreak deal 6 kind of card, that might be solid in the future too if we wanted. More silences as well. I don't really like more than one Hush in this deck because we have both Fangs and Spacey Sketcher to find as Equinox. So unless like a champion that we want to silence comes up, I only really like one Hush in this version of Targon. But yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I'll be sure to put the deck codes down below as well for the people who want them. I hope you all enjoyed this video and maybe found some inspiration for a deck to try out on the ladder. Big fan of the balance patch. Getting rid of Kaisa, I feel, just opens up a lot of avenues for other decks. Of course, you know how it's going to be. We're all going to be complaining about the meta in a couple of weeks because that's just how we all are as card game players. We always want to complain about the meta and whatever's at top, but I still do think this upcoming meta is going to be better than the last patch because Kaisa, in my opinion, was just that oppressive, and so was Bard a little bit as well. And those two decks got nerfed pretty hard. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear what you guys have been playing yourself in the current patch and how you guys have been doing with the current patch and whether you like it or not. Whether you think some cards were nerfed too much or not enough. And just, again, tell me just how you enjoy it. And if you guys just enjoyed the video in general, I'd love it if you could leave a like or a comment down below. Always helps me and the channel out. And if you guys want to keep up with Legends of Runeterra content, you can always go and subscribe to the channel as well. Also, if you want to watch me play some Legends of Runeterra, I've been playing it a lot as well because of the new balance patch. You can always go and check me out over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Xanaton, where I stream pretty much every single day. Anyway, though, with that all said and done, thank you all once more for watching this video, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.